Ring deployment, big one with a lot of, we're kind of looking at really bringing a usability and all sorts of user experience into this. So it is really more than just a MVP in certain ways. We want this to be used and applied by all our customers, and we are very hopeful that it will make a big difference in the way you manage the various deployments, how you roll out deployments, and very importantly, how you can qualitatively determine which patches are crucial, which are not breaking your environment. So you get the feedback, you incorporate that, and then decide whether to promote the patch moving forward, right? So that's the actual value that it brings to the table. So, as part of that, there are things like, ring configurations. That's what kicks it off. Device selections, and I'll get into more details as we go through ring specific slides here. Batch reporting in the first when we first released reporting last quarter, we included 3 summary reports, which were just the start. We are now expanding these into to 6 additional reports, which is a combination of both summary and detailed views. So I'll also get into those areas. Enhanced capabilities such as being able to pre-schedule reports, like kind of auto generation of reports based on a schedule that you can select, or emailing. These are going to follow suit. So expect that towards the end of Q1, right? And Amazon Linux, it's been well sought after, and we've been focused on getting that in line. So expect that as well in about a few weeks, I would say, somewhere around the February timeframe. So that, and another very important one on the right side that you see is preferred servers. I will dive a little bit more into that in details as well. It's a big blockbuster item for us in terms of feature or functionality that we wanted to bring to the table for a lot of the users who want to be able to just have a designated preferred server within their environment. A lot of the customers would want to use the preferred server as the source, and it makes total sense. And so the preferred server can download all the patches, and it's not just for patches. This is also going to be used for app distribution and so forth. So it's something that we want to, we are looking forward to, and we would definitely want our customers to try it out and adopt this as they move forward. Ring deployment. Problems that I kind of discussed, or that I just mentioned earlier. You have an unsatisfactory experience with rolling out a bunch of patches. You can test it and then decide, oh, I don't want to move this forward. It's going to cause a huge problem. Instability in a bunch of machines. I don't want that. Very disruptive. So this will give you a more predictive way of patching, and kind of also, kind of going through that criteria as well. So promoting a patch to a set of boundaries. So what we have defined are 3 different types of rings. You do a test ring, you configure an early adopter ring, and you configure a production ring with a soak time, which essentially allows you to determine how long is a particular ring going to be, how many days are you going to allow on a particular ring, meaning a test ring. Say typically, just a rule of thumb is you take 1% of your test environment, of your entire environment. Say if you have 100 endpoints or 1,000 endpoints, so 1% of that 1,000 would be 100, and then 10% you assign towards early adopter, 10% of the devices, and the remaining number of devices which was essentially 89%, goes into production. So you take the test group, see what's coming out of it in terms of patch deployment, what's the feedback. You can auto set certain criteria that you can see on the right hand side, the success threshold and all that. And I have a more detailed screen for this. And then you can then track the performance of these rings, right? What is going on? patch-centric state versus device-centric state. And I have some pictures on that as well. And then you can decide whether to promote these patches. You can manually promote. You can select that even at config time, or you can automatically promote. In auto promotion, also, you should still be able to manually promote a few patches if you wish to do it that way, right? Of course, the value is predictability, removes a lot of uncertainty around the organization and so forth. There's a mock-up we're still working on. The early screens are built out, and it's a real replica of what you see here on the screen. It will be primarily applied to routine maintenance because that's where we see a lot of value, at least as it relates to rings at the onset. And then depending on user uptake and feedback, we may want to introduce rings to these other deployment models like priority updates and for 0-day updates. But for now, it's routine maintenance, and that's kind of how it is. We're trying to just bring everything in one place. So within your existing configuration screen, like patch config screen, you would see this enhancement. So there would be a toggle that says ring deployment. If you enable it, this kind of expands. You see these two sections expand, and you would be able to set the success criteria based on which you want to promote a bunch of patches, soak time, deployment time to kick things off, right? You could select a deployment schedule for this particular config. I want to do monthly, weekly, and whatnot. And then likewise, everything pretty much follows suit. So that's the primary screen. This is the patch-centric view that I was talking about, which gives you a real-time perspective on how many patches are still in soaking condition, what percentage or total have been promoted to the next ring, how many are awaiting promotion, and not being promoted means they have been demoted. Like, hey, this patch, I received feedback from my test group or early adopter group users that, hey, this patch is causing a lot of problems, so we decide not to promote it, right? Certainly it shouldn't go to the production level, right, at that point, of the production ring. And then you'll also be able to see, so this is a click-through kind of model. So basically it's a filter. The graph is a filter as well, acts as a filter, like most of our graphs are. So you see this table, the grid here, changing based on what you select, whichever slice of the pie you select. And it's going to give you information that's very crucial about the patch in terms of the vendor's severity importance, the VRR, the installation progress and so forth, and the status, and the user sentiment. The user sentiment is something which we are going to introduce in Q2, but this is a mock-up, but I just wanted to give you a perspective. User sentiment will be driven through the bots, through the user bots, which is part of self-healing product line, right? So that user sentiment then also gives you an additional perspective on whether you want to move these patches forward. This is a device-centric view, which is test ring, early adopter, and production, all of them, or you can selectively choose whichever ring-specific views you want to get into. And of course, it shows the reasons for the failure as well, right? For example, patch target not found, or timeout, or whatnot, right? And very importantly, how many of these devices are in progress of being patched, or how many have been patched. And again, you see more details down here in the grid. Okay, so that's kind of what is coming along. And one other thing which I wanted to mention here is you can, if you look here to the left, you can move device across the rings. Essentially, you can choose or select one of these devices, multiple devices, and say, if you're in test ring, I want to move it into, I made a mistake. This device should have been actually in early adopter or in production ring, so I can move the device, right, in the middle of the ring. Now, there is a logic that we have derived as to how and what that particular device should contribute to the status or criteria of the ring. And we are pretty much, we have reached a point where we think the logic is good enough and it's something which will stick well. So we have kind of that as well, right? The next one, big one, is preferred server, right? There was always a need to have this distribution server that can stage patches. And of course, there is a patching policy and deployment task, and based on which that this particular device is going to get all the information about the missing patches. So the device can then reach out to the sync engine. So we have this concept of a sync engine now with preferred server. And the sync engine is going to actually reach out to these vendors or the vendor sites and download these patches. So, particularly if you have environment in your environment, if you have issues with low bandwidth, right, or you have restrictions around each and every endpoint or device connecting directly to the internet to download patches, this is really the way to go. And that I am very sure a lot of our customers will actually embrace this moving forward. So you can therefore designate a server to host patches, configure one or more preferred servers as a primary or a secondary. This also in addition to peer-to-peer. So there will be a logic like, okay, peer-to-peer is the first option. If you disable peer-to-peer, then preferred servers, and then the last option will be going directly for each endpoint to go directly to the vendor site and downloading the patch. So that's the preferential order. The patches will be pre-staged, and then you can track the status of downloaded patches based on errors or failures. So we will bring that perspective as well. So you don't have to feel lost if you see an error. Well, this patch is not getting downloaded, but you'll have the breadcrumbs to go and track all the way to like, oh, okay, this is the reason why it's not downloaded or it's failed, right? And you can also retain each patch for a certain duration, and that's what we are referring to as a global time to live. We are introducing that concept as well. Okay, so just a few pictures here, screenshots that mimic the actual replica, or the actual screen that we are going to end up with. We will have the ability to add a preferred server. So the screen is kind of going to look very similar to this, where you can enter the name of the preferred server, a credential, whatever is needed, and the SMB path and so forth. You can have multiple preferred servers, right, that can be set up based on an IP address or subnets, right? So you can have a subnet designated for subnet with one preferred server designated for that subnet, another subnet with a separate preferred server, and so on and so forth. The deployment history view on preferred server, as I was mentioning earlier, that we will give you the trail or we'll give you the ability to track what the errors are. So in here, what we have done, we've changed a few things. Instead of top 10 failures, we are calling it failures and warnings. So for example, if your preferred server is you're staging the patches on the preferred server first, or peer-to-peer, whichever the case is, or both, you will get an error or even a failure message. For example, if, for example, the preferred server download, the peer-to-peer failed, preferred server failed, and the device had to go on its own to get those patches, the patch download would be successful, but your preferred download method or preferred download path is going to show that it was unsuccessful. So we want to be able to give you that information, right? Hey, your preferred servers have been having failed because of some network infrastructure issues, right? So we are going to give you that specific information in front of you. So this will lead to a modal window, and then that will show, oh, okay, this is where the problem actually is. And also in this, down here in this grid, we are going to show this, as you can see here, that link refers to the modal window. That's going to show, okay, what was the actual cause for the error? Was it a preferred server? Was it a peer-to-peer? Or anything else? Another thing which we introduced that I'm sure some of you are taking advantage of is reboot criticality. Now, reboot criticality has essentially, it's an important piece where if a device has specific patches deployed but it also can be disruptive, right? Because you're asking the end user to reboot the machine. And how do you kind of separate that out based on levels of criticality of the patch? So that is where the value is, reboot flexibility on the user side, also avoid disruption. What we did was we added the ability under patch config to set based on your patch. Say, for example, if this is a routine maintenance, you set this to advise low priority reboot, versus if it's a 0-day update, so you really want to push it out, and no matter what, the end users have to reboot ASAP. So you set it to critical high priority, right? But then this helps to also, this is ultimately controlled by this, what I'm calling main switch under agent policy, where reboot criticality is being configured. So for example, if you set here advised, but this is only set to critical on the right side under the main switch, then anything advised will not work. So that is something you have to bear parity with. And it actually ensures that, okay, all the different other services, like other than patch management, for example, app control or app distribution that uses reboot criticality, are all on the same page. So that's why we have this so-called the main switch concept. The other important thing is reporting here, as I was mentioning earlier, and like 6 very new reports that I mentioned: detailed devices by patch, devices by CVE, detailed patches by devices, summary of devices by CVE. So these are all new. I'll just quickly just show the other screen. Give me 1 second. So if some of you have already started using reports, you probably are very familiar with this. All right, so in here, under patch management reports, is when you go and try to create a new report, this is all of course, even until last month, you would be seeing 3 reports that were all summary specific reports, like patches by device, devices by patches, and then where's the other one? There was deployment summary. So those were the 3. Now you would be able to get the detailed reports for each of these. We gave you patches by device you could see patches by device with more details. Likewise, more detailed reports for devices by patches, and then certainly the CVE centric reports, which are going to give you a very good understanding of what your vulnerabilities are based on the conditions of certain devices, where they are, and so forth. So you can go after these devices in particular, right? We are also showing you a detailed deployment report, as well as monthly maintenance report. So all these are going to be a whole bunch of very good tools for you to go out and look at things, and also share with anybody else in the company who needs to be on top of things, right? So what essentially happens is very simple. If you select one of these details, devices by CVE, you just go in here, my CV details. I want to do a PDF, and then you could get to select different template options. You could select all your CVs, or you could just go with selective CVs. What I could do is I could, for example, do just high and critical, and then I can do just all devices, or you could selectively choose devices. I do all devices, and I can submit the report. So it's kind of pretty much like that. So then the report goes into a schedule mode, and then in progress and so forth. Just a while ago, I was able to generate a report, so I'm going to download that. It just takes a bit of time depending on the amount of data you're trying to pull into that report, right? Okay, a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to download this report that I'd already generated. I'm going to open this. And so that's my CVE report that I had created earlier with all the CVE information. You can see the VRR ratings. So those were the filters that I'd applied: 7 to 8 and 8 to 9. 7 to 9 point something. And a number of devices that have been unpatched versus patched, which is great because my unpatched device is 0 for this high CVE rating. And that's kind of how it's going to look like, right? These are the more details around which patch, which vendor, what platform, and so forth.
Yeah, real quick, we haven't really spoken much about our patch content catalog lately on the supported products that we have. So we thought we'd give you a quick update on all the activity that's occurred during the last quarter. First of all, some of you may be questioning, like, how do we decide what applications go into the product catalog? Well, we do request ideas on what people would like to see. We have an ideas portal. The link is here, where you can actually request support for different products. We do give weighted consideration to those applications that have enterprise-wide applicability. We also give some weight to those that are multi-operating system, whether it be Windows, multiple versions of Windows, Windows and Mac OS, etc. So we do provide support, and we look for those as well. We do generally release updates for multiple products, and we do have a lot. I put all the acronyms there just because I didn't want to waste a lot of space on the screen. You should recognize most of these as like neurons for patch management, for example. I did include the recently released applications here in the last quarter. These were some of the top requested applications that we had in our queue, again, from our ideas portal. You can see here we have things like VS Codium, a tool that a lot of our customers use. Devolution's remote desktop for both Windows and Mac. Next slide there, Sean. Additional products include Ultra Edit. We've had a lot of requests for that, ShareX, etc. And finally, in the last quarter, we've provided support for finally the Adobe Creative Cloud applications. We focused really on this quarter on the Windows applications. We have a few more to add, but we have most of them covered now. So we'll be able to do updates on those. Next slide, Sean. And one thing that I didn't really call out here specifically are those applications I just listed are first time appearance in the catalog. Basically, we do have different versioning, obviously, as new versions of the applications show up. So for example, Adobe Creative Cloud 2025. You saw those all listed as 2024. We are adding 2025. As a matter of fact, most of the Windows apps for 2025 are already in the catalog. We treat each and every one of these as basically a new product, because the vendors often change the way they do updates when they do major version updates. So we have to look carefully at these and do a lot of research sometimes before we can support them. But you can see we've added support for a lot of different operating systems as well as versions of .NET, etc. Just a couple of things on the roadmap. I just have a few here. We actually have a long list, but these are kind of the ones that are in the queue for the next couple of weeks. OpenVPN Connect has been a heavily requested application. AnyDesk Remote Desktop. Matter of fact, I was just talking to the team this morning. That's in final QA testing, so you'll see that one pretty soon. PolyLens app for Windows and Mac both. We have that also close by. And finally, we are going to do Creative Cloud on the Mac side as well. So you'll see that coming out here in the next quarter as we begin work on that too. So that's it for me. I'll turn it over to the RBVM team. Thanks.
So for this release, I think kind of introduced Orca last Innovators, the last Innovators meeting. So I probably won't be delving too much into that. Veracode SCA is our newest connector, and it'll be going to beta here very shortly at the end of the quarter. And if you have any interest in joining the beta program for that, let me know. So that is a static code analysis and kind of helps people to find components that are probably need to be updated in their code bases. The EPSS, so that's the exploit prediction probability score, which kind of is a model for telling you when if you have any CVEs that are potentially going to be exploited in the next 30 days. So that is probably more important for our vulnerability KB, since that sort of shows all the CVEs and the intelligence we have around them. But also that data will be showing up in RBVM, ASPM, where there's CVEs known to be associated with the findings that are going to be linked to the scanners. And the custom severity version, so we've got a feature to allow you to change the severity, not the VRR, which is our proprietary score, but our severity for findings. And so that one I will be demoing here in a second and kind of make it help with a little bit more sense. But our newest feature addition to that is a notification telling users when that migration gets launched. For dashboards and widgets, we had a couple of feature requests that we were able to get to. So one of them was adding the open and closed finding counts on the group metrics widgets as percentages. This is the current counts, not the historical trends. And then also we have a widget which shows the groups that are potentially most impacted by ransomware. And we made a couple of usability fixes to basically remove the system groups that always show all assets. And it's not something that people can change. These groups are more about user assignment. There's another additional feature request coming that will allow users to omit certain groups that maybe they're not as interested in because they don't really have domain over them, but they're seeing them anyway because some of the assets have membership in both. I don't know exactly when that's going to probably be in the next release or in the release after. And then ServiceNow incident auto ticketing is basically using a finding collection and then linking that to the ticketing connector for ServiceNow incident and creating ticketing configuration for a specific set of findings that match filters. Okay, so custom severity kind of has two use cases. One is for organization that allows you to, for an organization that has its own policies and maybe wants to contrast VRR with their own, either with CVSS, if that's something that they're interested in, or with maybe scanner reported severity. And then also the second use case is for the organizations that like VRR but want to change VRR with a workflow. And we won't allow users to change VRR, but with this feature, we'll allow them to mirror severity. So a custom severity, you'll be going to client settings. So you need to be probably an administrator or a user with client settings control if you have, custom role. And then currently, severity is the highest of CVSS v3, v2, and scanner severity. So that could still be configured here, but you also have the choice of maybe removing some of those factors and bringing on other ones like VRR, and then picking the highest of all the scores. And the other option is to choose priority order. So that you say you most want to see CVSS v3 if data is available. So you would pick the highest of the scores for all the CVSS scores that are V3, and then that finding would always be assigned the highest of that score as long as that V3 is available. If no V3 is available, then you could pick 2. So you can add these and you can reorder them. Normalized scanner severity is always required, so that way we always have a fallback. The normalized scanner severity is the scanner severity mapped to a 1 to 10 score, and then you can also remove them. And then continued confirmation, you would enter, and then there's some warnings about the fact it's going to take a few days to calculate, and then also we lock down the migration, so you can't just submit a new one right after you've done this. It needs to go through process and then give you some chance to evaluate your choices. So yeah, you'll probably want to double check all of your configurations before you go through and hit the button. The notification, so that you would go to the notifications page to configure. And this will be under preferences. So you go over to the new Severity custom version. This will probably be something you eventually want to enable for all users, at least in platform, although they can turn it off. And the configuration can either be platform, in platform only, or email. There's no roll-ups for this one. And an example of what it will look like is going to be this. It'll give you the new method, the previous method, and who launched it and what the version is.
ESM side of the house, I'll just touch upon briefly on what we delivered last quarter for 2024 Q4. One of the main features we delivered was the workspaces. Okay, so ESM itself is a relatively new product. Okay, so till then it was only one scope that our customers were operating in. Okay, and with this workspaces, we provided them the ability to sort of segment the data of their assets and exposures into these workspaces. Okay, this becomes particularly important when the organizations also operate with third-party vendors. Okay, or rather, if they have departments, if they are a substantially large organization, their security team has to organize their assets into these workspaces. Okay, so this is what we delivered in Q4. And we sort of also revamped the product around these, meaning we also gave specific dashboards to workspace view, vis-a-vis an all workspace view. Okay, so these sort of revamping helped us in delivering a better UX, better user experience. Also, making the reviews of the attack surface posture more efficient. Okay. And also what we also did, we also tweaked the reporting workflow. Also made it, we brought in the ability so that the customers can generate reports at workspace level. Okay. And also while retaining the ability to generate the reports at the account level. So just to quickly show you in the product, this is how, if you can see the whole dashboard, the whole experience now is tightly connected to the workspaces. Okay. And like I said, what this essentially gives is the ability to have better visibility and better segmentation of all the assets and exposure data. Next, so what we did, okay, also we gave the additional levers to the security teams, right? Okay, there can be movement or influx and outflux of team members. People can be joining security teams, can be leaving security teams also. So we gave them the options to move assets. Okay, I mean, it was a particular seed asset, maybe assigned to one workspace at one point of time, but we also gave them an added flexibility to change the assignment of assets or moving these asset ownerships across timeline. Okay, so this in combination with the workspace feature turned out to be really good. One of our customers, Grand Bank, we got some very positive feedback around these features in our Q4 release. Okay, last but not the least, what we also added in response to customer feedback was for the exposures we are reporting. I mean, the ask from the field was, can you provide more evidence as to why are you reporting this exposure? Okay, so that is when we worked with our OEM provider and we included this evidence in the reporting. For example, if there is a blocklisted IP detected, right? Or I'm saying your certificate is reaching expiry, we included evidence into this where they can refer and which can be helpful for their remediation efforts as well. Okay, so with this, pretty much that was the Q4 story. Now I can jump into what we are planning or what will be released shortly for Q1 2025. First and foremost, lateral domains. So imagine entities within an organization operating separately, right? Every organization goes through M&A activity, right? There can be instances where they can imagine Ivanti and Mobile Island at one point of time, or Ivanti and Risk Sense, right? So what happens is there can be still these assets, okay, considered as separate entities, but without this visibility of these lateral assets, okay, that can become an entry point into the attack surface that can be utilized by threat actors. Okay, so it's very important. So in addition to doing this subdomain discovery and reporting assets and exposures, we are going to add this new dimension of lateral domain discovery to the EASM functionality. Okay, of course, I'll show you a sneak peek into this. I have a development environment up and running. Okay, but in addition to this, what we are also delivering in Q1 is an executive summary template, right? So our existing reporting is around a detailed reporting, okay, which the feedback was, okay, it's good for a tactical, security analyst kind of a role. Okay, how about leadership consumption or oversight? Okay, that is when we added, this is a new template we're going to release. So it's a crisp two-page PDF report, very high level overview. Asset distribution, what are your key exposures? Okay, how are you faring? How are your organization's security efforts faring, right? So that's what it is. Okay. Also, one important point is right now, any data ingress, outgress out of ESM, it has to be exported because we don't have any out of the box integrations, though they are on our roadmap. I'm going to show you roadmap shortly. So, but till we build these integrations with other Ivanti products and of course third parties, etc., right? So we also enabled ability to export assets and exposure data, to facilitate in the interim, right? At the time we build these integrations. Okay, so these two enhancements related to reports or data exports are in the plan for Q1. Last but not the least, you might have heard about Security Insights, which uses the same backend technology as EASM. Okay, there are few changes coming up with Security Insights as well for this quarter. I'll touch upon them, but for that. So again, to show you how the experience looks like for lateral domains, right? So again, automatically, there is no need to do any setup again in EASM. As soon as you add a seed domain, even the lateral domains are automatically discovered. But what we provide for the administrators is the ability to accept or reject these lateral domains. Okay, because not all domains they might want to include in their reviews, right? So we provided this approval workflow wherein administrators can approve or reject. Okay, and also once an lateral domain is approved, it gets merged into the assets. So any exposures on these assets will be continuously scanned and reported across all our 6 risk vectors. Again, I spoke about executive report and data export enhancement. So this pretty much covers it. This is how an executive summary report looks like. Okay, it's again 2-page report. Okay, now coming to security insights, an important change coming this quarter is what we are bringing Ivanti branded security insights reports, which our sales team can leverage for cross-selling or upselling Ivanti products, right? Meaning it's an incremental change. Till now, we had this operating T-Mobile branded reports where security insights was used for a combination of products with our partner T-Mobile as well as Ivanti products, but the branding was T-Mobile pretty much. So now we have new tenants coming up. We're going to, because in addition to what is already in operation, we're going to deploy new tenants for these Ivanti branded reports usually. And these will contain only Ivanti products, needless to say. So this change we think is an important evolution in empowering our sales team for direct sales. Okay. We have few more thoughts around how to improve security insights. I'll touch upon them when we go to our roadmap. So let me just take a break from the slides and jump to the console to quickly show you the experience of, okay, I spoke about workspaces. So if you see the total dashboard experience, right, all the data you can see now, users have the flexibility to switch to any workspace and see the relevant data, for example. And like I said, what I was referring to is now they have the ability to move assets to any of the other workspaces by providing specific destination workspace names. So again, reports, right now it's with this Jan release, we'll be seeing a new template like I was adhering to executive summary report. Okay, so what I wanted to show you quickly was the lateral domains experience, right? So we did, again, like I said, lateral domain discovery works automatically based on the seeds the user has entered. Okay, there is no specific setup required for that. Okay, and they show up in the new tab called unverified domains. Okay, keeping the nomenclature aside, these are the laterally discovered domains. Okay, and what we are also doing is putting up a banner right on the face of the user so that they don't miss these lateral domains. Again, like I said, entry points to the attack surface, right? If they go unnoticed. So again, so these are the workflows. So accept and reject workflows I was talking about. So let's say I accept this and I assign a specific workspace and I say assign. So all this, so getpocket.com and all the associated assets are added to this workspace now. So they'll be treated as organization's own assets. The scanning happens. There is a periodicity of 1 week for ESM to scan and see are there any other new assets that are discovered, etc., etc. So all that happens. The workflow kicks in. So this is, so again, if you go back and go to the workspace, I'll just jump to the assets. So you can see the lateral domain which we just approved, right? I'm circling my mouse pointer there. So now this is in the security team's visibility now, okay? All this C domain and its associated assets. So that's how lateral domains works. And quickly, reports, right? Yeah. So there's a detailed workspace report, but I can just show you a quick mock of how the executive summary report looks. So like I said, it doesn't run into tens of pages. It's primarily for leadership consumption. So we give a high level overview, sort of an inverted pyramid there. This format is most liked because it clearly tells you, if you see the bottom two tiers, right? What is exploitable, meaning how many of these exposures have a publicly known exploit associated with it, okay? And even within that, if there is a ransomware, that's like high priority. So this is the high-level overview we are providing through executive summary report. Yeah. I can quickly show you the security insights too, but slightly different UI you'll see now with only Ivanti products. Okay, so you provide the organization, the prospect organization name, a salesperson, a sales rep provides this prospective organization name, domain, etc. sort of for which they want to generate this report for, and they select the category. So there are some suggestions based on the category. For example, if it's SMB, it's only these two products which we recommend. Okay, again, right now we are open for more feedback and fine tuning of this product, but right now we targeted mainly security products, and also primarily based on feedback from our sales community, we kept these handful of products within the recommendations. So they can check or uncheck. So what happens is when they generate a report, I'll go you and show one of the already generated reports. So there is an attack surface data, but along with it, there is some boilerplate around our products and what value they deliver. So this is what will be essentially useful for the sales pitch. So that's pretty much it from my side. Yeah, thank you.